Hello and welcome back to the Military Matrix. Tonight, we're following a breaking story that's shaking Russia's core logistics network, a direct and devastating Ukrainian strike deep inside Russian territory. This wasn't just another battlefield skirmish. This was a calculated hit on one of Russia's most vital lifelines, a massive fuel pipeline system that keeps the Kremlin's war machine moving. According to both Ukrainian intelligence and open-source confirmations, the strike targeted the Koltsovoy pipeline network near the Raymansky district, just outside Moscow, a system stretching hundreds of kilometers and capable of transporting millions of tons of fuel every year. Ukraine claims all three main lines carrying gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel were completely disabled in the operation. This is not just another explosion. This is a strategic masterstroke designed to disrupt the very bloodstream of Russia's military logistics. The Koltsovoy pipeline supplies not only civilian fuel, but directly supports Russia's armed forces, feeding air bases, armored divisions, and critical logistical depots. It's a system responsible for moving up to 3 million tons of jet fuel, nearly 3 million tons of diesel, and over 1 million tons of gasoline annually. By taking this out, Ukraine has effectively cut a major artery that fuels Russian offensives across multiple fronts. Analysts are calling it one of the most daring and far-reaching attacks since the war began, a strike that reaches beyond the battlefield and straight into the infrastructure supporting it. The method of attack remains classified, but multiple reports suggest a combination of long-range drones and precision-guided munitions were used. Ukrainian defense sources hinted that the mission was conducted by the Security Service of Ukraine, the SBU, working in coordination with military intelligence. The strike, they said, was designed not only to cause physical damage but to send a message: Russia's interior is not untouchable anymore. The explosion reportedly triggered a chain of secondary blasts along the pipeline, causing fires that burned for hours. Russian emergency services rushed to contain the blaze, but by the time they did, vast sections of the pipeline were rendered inoperable. For the Kremlin, the attack is a logistical nightmare. Russia's vast military apparatus relies heavily on consistent and predictable fuel delivery. Any disruption means armored columns can't move as fast, air operations become limited, and supply chains grow thinner. Repairing such a massive infrastructure system under wartime conditions isn't simple, especially when Ukrainian strikes are becoming more frequent and more precise. Russian officials have already tried to downplay the incident, calling it a technical malfunction. But satellite images and local eyewitness footage tell another story. Fireballs lit up the night sky, and multiple supply convoys were seen rerouting within hours of the explosion. This attack also represents a turning point in Ukraine's strategic doctrine. Rather than focusing purely on frontline advances, Ukraine has begun systematically targeting Russia's deep logistics, its storage depots, rail lines, command centers, and now its pipelines. By doing so, Kiev aims to paralyze Moscow's ability to sustain prolonged offensives. A Ukrainian official put it bluntly: "We no longer fight just on the front lines. We fight where it hurts the most, their supply lines." In essence, Ukraine is waging a war of attrition that strikes not just the soldier with a rifle, but the machinery that fuels him. What makes this strike particularly bold is the location. The Raymansky district is roughly 40 kilometers from central Moscow, deep inside Russia, far beyond traditional combat zones. It demonstrates that Ukraine's reach through intelligence, sabotage networks, and long-range systems has expanded dramatically. This isn't an isolated event. Over the past few months, there's been a sharp increase in attacks on Russian oil refineries, ammunition depots, and rail nodes. Each operation builds pressure on Russia's wartime economy, creating a ripple effect that slows production, logistics, and morale. For Russia, this presents an enormous strategic dilemma. How does it protect thousands of kilometers of vulnerable infrastructure stretched across one of the world's largest countries? Every kilometer of pipeline, every rail junction, every storage depot becomes a potential target. The cost of defending all of it is astronomical and the psychological effect devastating. Even inside its own borders, Russia now faces the reality of vulnerability. For the average Russian citizen, this incident is a reminder that the war, once thought distant, is creeping closer to home. Meanwhile, in Kiev, the mood is one of cautious celebration. Ukrainian officials hailed the operation as a success in disrupting Russian logistics, but they also signaled that this is only the beginning. They believe that deep strikes like this will eventually force Russia to reconsider its offensive operations in eastern and southern Ukraine. If Russian tanks can't move, if aircraft can't fly, and if supplies can't reach the front, the advantage begins to tilt. Western analysts agree, noting that strategic interdiction, cutting off the enemy's ability to resupply, can be more effective than direct assaults. You can defeat an army not just by fighting it, but by starving it, one analyst said. The timing of the strike also carries symbolic weight. As winter approaches, fuel becomes even more crucial for both military and civilian operations. Heating, transport, and logistics all depend on it. By crippling a major fuel artery, Ukraine isn't just targeting Russia's army, it's targeting its resilience. The coming months could see fuel shortages ripple through military units and even civilian sectors. This creates internal pressure on the Kremlin, forcing it to balance between keeping the army supplied and maintaining stability at home. The international reaction has been swift. Western officials have quietly praised Ukraine's ingenuity and precision, calling it a game-changing demonstration of modern hybrid warfare. Russia, on the other hand, has condemned the attack as an act of terrorism, a label it often uses to frame Ukrainian strikes inside its territory. Yet, as military experts point out, the target was a legitimate military objective, supplying fuel directly to combat operations. The line between civilian and military infrastructure, they say, is long blurred in modern warfare, especially when that infrastructure sustains the battlefield. As for the damage assessment, early reports suggest full restoration could take months, if not longer. Pipeline networks of this scale require specialized materials, skilled crews, and a stable environment to repair, none of which Russia currently enjoys. Moreover, replacement parts are increasingly difficult to obtain due to international sanctions. In short, even temporary fixes may not restore full capacity anytime soon. Some analysts suggest the strike may have caused more long-term disruption than months of economic sanctions could achieve. This operation underscores a larger truth. Ukraine's war is no longer just defense. It's strategic, calculated, and increasingly offensive in nature. Each strike is part of a broader campaign to dismantle the machinery that powers Russia's aggression. It's not just about reclaiming territory, it's about breaking the enemy's ability to wage war, and with every successful deep strike, that objective comes closer. For Moscow, the challenge now is twofold: repairing the physical damage and restoring the illusion of control. Every strike inside Russia chips away at the narrative that the homeland is safe, that the war is distant. The images of smoke rising near Moscow send a clear message to both Russian citizens and soldiers alike that the conflict is not confined to the borders of Ukraine. It's a message that could have long-term effects on morale, recruitment, and internal stability. In the coming weeks, all eyes will be on how Russia responds. Will it escalate its missile attacks on Ukrainian infrastructure? Will it attempt retaliatory sabotage operations in kind, or will it focus on fortifying its own vulnerable assets? Whatever the path, one thing is certain: the war has entered a new and unpredictable phase where distance is no longer protection and infrastructure has become the new frontline. This was a strike not just of firepower, but of message and meaning. Ukraine has shown that it can reach deep, strike hard, and alter the course of the conflict through intelligence and precision. Russia, once the hunter, now finds itself guarding its own territory against a foe that has mastered the art of unconventional warfare. And as both sides brace for the next phase, one reality becomes clear: the lifelines that sustain war are now the primary targets. Stay tuned for further updates as we continue to monitor this developing story. Ukraine's latest strike has reshaped the strategic landscape, proving once again that in modern warfare, the battlefield is everywhere. Thank you for watching the Military Matrix. We'll see you in the next report.